12-year-old boy is inspired to fight child slavery around the world.
His charity grows wildly successful with support from celebrities, world leaders, even Oprah.
And was this charity that was set up to fight child exploitation actually exploiting children?
We're previewing The White Saviors.
That's on this episode of So Much Crime,
So Little Time.
Hey Dee, before we talk about charities and people giving money to things that really maybe aren't a good idea, you know where people should give their money to that is a totally good idea and totally transparent and you know exactly where your dollars are going?
Where?
Patreon.com/SoMuchCrime, so little time. You can give $0 and be a free member. We'll take that. You can give $1, just a handful of dollars a month. You can email us and ask us, tell me exactly where every penny of that dollar is going, and we will write you back. Keep up a dialogue. We want to thank our newest members. I think our newest member is Anne. Thanks, Anne, for signing up. Really appreciate that.
Whoop, whoop.
When you become a paid member, you get all kinds of fun stuff. You get early released episodes, you get bonus content, outtakes, and it's not a charity. Technically, your money is going to us, but you still get that great feeling of supporting the show that you love.
Thank you.
Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Dee, and in this episode, we'll introduce you to The White Saviors, a podcast from Canadaland. Never heard of The White Saviors?
That's all right. In this episode, we're going to unpack the 19th century Kipling poem, The White Man's Burden, and explore the complicated issues of race, colonialism, and imperialism.
Wait, really?
I mean, we might do some of that, but mostly we're going to introduce you to this podcast that's called The White Saviors.
Will we spoil the podcast for people who haven't listened?
We will not.
Do we really have to talk about poetry?
We do not.
Great. And you'll also find a link to The White Saviors in our show notes.
In our next episode, we'll come back and discuss the whole series, but right now, we just want to decide if this is a crime that's worth your time. Okay, Dee, before we jump into talking about White Saviors, so the genesis of this charity comes from an event that happened that we'll talk about on April 16th, 1995. So, before we discuss, let's hop in the time machine. Dee, all right, to set the table a little bit about what was going on in America in April of 1995. So April 19th was the Oklahoma City bombing. This was when Timothy McVeigh, set a truck bomb off at the federal building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people and injuring 500 people. And then on April 24th, there was a package bomb that was linked to the Unabomber that blew up, killing Gilbert B. Murray. And then on April 20th...
This is supposed to be the light part of the show where we discuss some fun and like have a bit of crack with all these news stories, yeah?
I'm just setting the table, and I figure our true crime fans might be interested in what was going on in the world of crime. And my third and final fact about this month in 1995, on April 29th, the longest sausage ever was created. I figured we're doing a podcast that was from Canadaland, and this happened in Kitchener, Ontario. This sausage was 28.77 miles long. And I do have some bad news for you. That record does not still hold today. So that was set on April 29th of 1995. Today, in 2025, the current Guinness record for the longest sausage is 38.99 miles. That's 62.75 kilometers, which if you're in Canada or other parts of the world, that might be how you think about it. And that was set in 2014 in Romania. So, yeah.
Interesting. Thank you for bringing us those pieces of news. One really fun thing that was happening in Ireland in April, it's actually the 21st of April, 1995, is the sitcom, I don't know if you've heard about it, Jeff, Father Ted.
Father Ted, yes.
Yeah, it first aired on Channel 4 in the UK. And for those of you who don't know Father Ted, look, don't go in wanting something very PC. It is very funny, but it's also very Irish. And I just thought I was trying to look at like, the best quotes that came from Father Ted. And the first one on entertainment.ie that I came across was so very apt for our show today.
Okay.
The quote is, "That money was just resting in my account," which is a famous line from the show. And yeah, the second one is not as applicable to today, but it's, "I love my brick." Which, again, if you haven't seen the show, it's not funny at all. But if you have, I'm sure you got a good chuckle out of remembering Father Jack and his love for his brick. So there you go. It's a top show, I would say.
All right. Awesome. I have a flat read for you.
Oh,
Do you have a
God.
flat read?
I tried, but you know what happened in Ireland in 1995? All of the songs, I was like, what is the point? Like, what is the point in reading these songs to Jeff? He's not going to know them. We got like Back for Good by Take That. You would not have got it. Boyzone? Do you even know who Boyzone are?
I've heard that name before, but maybe just from doing this segment on this show.
Oh, maybe. A Key to My Life, like an absolute tune, was at the top of the charts for 5 weeks straight. Scatman. I'm a scat man. Do you know that song?
No.
No. That was there. There was a U2 song, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me.
I would have gotten that one. I know that one. That was from Batman. Batman Forever or Batman, one of the latter Batmans.
I mean, okay, look, yes, you know the song, but we cannot guarantee that you would have got that.
No, it's a lesser U2 song.
But it just like, chances are
All right, at least
you wouldn't have got it.
I definitely remember that song. That was a song that came out. It was tied to one of the bad Batman movies. And I remember thinking, this was a bad Batman movie, and this was a pretty bad U2 song.
I mean, I don't know the song, so I presume it's terrible.
It is. It was in that like
Dressing like your sister, living like a tart.
it was.
I don't know what you're doing, babe. It must be art.
I feel like this was between the Octung Baby and the Zooropa era of U2. They were in kind of a weird space at that time. Okay. I have a very simple and short game for you. That's about the three big movies that came out or were at the top of the movie charts in the United States in April of 1995. So I'm going to read you a quick quote from a review and then ask you to guess the movie or match the quote to the movie. Okay?
You're going to tell me the three movies.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you the names of the movies and then I'm going to read three quotes and you have to say which one's which movie.
Okay.
All right. The three movies.
Yeah.
Bad Boys.
Oh,
1.
yeah.
Bad Boys 1. Tommy Boy. It's Chris Farley,
Okay,
David Spade. And Outbreak.
Okay.
Do you know Outbreak? Dustin Hoffman, Renee Russo, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey. There's a monkey. It's about a pandemic, a global pandemic.
I know.
It definitely had some new resonance in 2020, and I watched it again, and it didn't really hold up. But.
Yeah, I mean, the
Okay.
90s, eh?
All right, you've seen Bad Boys?
Yeah.
Okay. Tommy
so
Boy.
many times.
Tommy Boy, you haven't seen?
Mm-mm.
Okay, but you know who Chris Farley is? David Spade.
Sure.
It's
I know David Spade.
kind of a silly Saturday Night Live adjacent comedy. It's not actually from a Saturday Night Live skit. Okay, and Outbreak, I told you about a virus that kills everybody.
Okay, cool.
All right,
Feels familiar.
first quote. The movie is an assembly of cliches and obligatory scenes from dozens of other movies. All are better. It has only one original idea, and that's a bad one. The inspiration of making the hero sidekick into, simultaneously, his buddy, his critic, and his rival. It's from Roger Ebert. Okay. Do you want to hear all three quotes, or do you want to try guessing?
All three quotes.
Okay. Next one, also from Roger Ebert. Whom do they make these movies for? What exercise in self-deception inspires them to go to such effort and expense for what is obviously going to be a lame exercise in retreadsmanship? Retreadsmanship is a word I'd never heard before. And the last one. This movie soon mutates into one of those action-packed movies in which the plot points become increasingly preposterous and you're aware of its idiocy every second of the way. And that's Steve Davis of the Austin Chronicle.
Okay. That's confusing.
I know. I also searched for bad reviews. Some were easier to find for some of these movies than others.
Okay. So I think the Bad Boys one is the first review you read.
The assembly of cliches and obligatory scenes from dozens of other movies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think. Or else it's the SNL guys one. Tommy Boy.
Okay.
And then I think, no, because I think Outbreak is the second one.
The whom do they make these movies for?
No. God, I'm bad today.
This is hard when you haven't seen 2 of the 3 movies.
Yeah, I'm going to say the first review is Bad Boys, second review is Tommy Boy or whatever that one was, and the third review is Outbreak.
All right. You were 1 for 3.
Oh.
The last
one was right?
was Outbreak, yeah. And the clue was this movie soon mutates.
I did hear the mutates in it, and I was wondering. I also am like, who do they make this movie for about Bad Boys? Like everyone? Like,
Yeah.
who's not going to like that?
Roger Ebert's review of Bad Boys was real scathing. His review of Tommy Boy and Bad Boys were both, I think, 1 star or half a star. But incidentally, the other movie I almost included was the Liam Neeson movie Rob Roy.
Oh, yeah.
Which he loved. I think he gave almost 4 stars to. And he talked about the sword fighting scene near the end as one of the best sword fighting scenes in the history of movies.
I mean, Liam Neeson. Who doesn't love looking at him?
All right. That is our time machine for today.
What's this podcast? Tell me about it.
All right. So, Dee, the White Saviors, let's talk about what this is. So it came out in 2021. Our host is Olusola Adeogun. There are 5 episodes, and then an update came out right after the 5th episode. So I feel like we should just say there's 6 episodes. The 6th one.
It sounds like 5 plus 1 is 6, yes.
That
indeed.
sounds like math. The episodes range in length from 20 minutes to about 45 minutes long. What's the story?
But
Dee?
what's the story? Yeah. So we're introduced to Craig Kielburger and his older brother Mark. Mark with a C? That's so exotic.
What's that from?
There used to be this ad. So my friend.
Oh, you've told this story. Yes.
I think I have told this story. It's like Mark with a C. That's so exotic. At the same time that they were going out, it was very funny. So in 1995, so Craig was inspired by a boy from Pakistan who was sold into slavery at the age of 4. And started to use his voice to advocate for people who had been sold, but then was seemingly assassinated at the age of 12. And this assassination apparently happened on April 16th, 1995, which is where we got our time machine date from. Craig then launched Free the Children, which was a charity based on getting children to help other children, to raise money, to send supplies, help build schools, and help get children out of slave labor, basically. But it seemed like the family was perhaps using all of this success to get themselves rich, pocketing some of the money that should have gone to help children in need. It was in 2020, after 25 years, this all erupted as a major scandal over how their charity used its money. And I think the reason it became such a big deal was because of the number of celebrities who had gone in and backed them, and also the government who had gone in and tried to help support them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jeff, this is different.
A little bit.
Tell me your thoughts and feelings.
Well, okay. So first off, I should say I picked this podcast, and part of this was in response to our goal of traveling to different parts of the world that we didn't go to in 2024. And I recognize that this is from Canadaland, which sounds like it's a Canadian podcast, and it's about Canadians, but it is, and I think it's going to get more into stories from other parts of the world, including Africa, where our host is from. He's from Nigeria, and he talks a little about his experience with NGOs and what went on.
That was pretty fascinating, wasn't it? Like, what a cool connection in terms of like hosting the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this firsthand, like I saw them cut a ribbon when they were like announcing an NGO was going to come and like build whatever. and then they cut the ribbon and there's like this big press conference and the whole town is getting so excited and then they never show up.
Right. Right. Which is, I mean, it seems like so he has firsthand experience with what they're going on to basically report on going on with the Kielburgers. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I don't know. I went down a couple of rabbit holes as just after listening to the first episode, just to try to learn a little bit more about the background, both of the story, but also, which I know we're going to get into more in our recap, but also even just Canadaland, which is an organization I didn't know, and it seems like they've had a little bit of controversy themselves behind the scenes. That was news to me. So we hear from Jesse Brown, one of the people that is talking in this first episode. So Jesse Brown is the founder of Canadaland, and I guess it's been a little bit of a lightning rod for some kind of controversial views where it seems like he's some sort of investigative journalist who maybe goes after journalists who are doing bad things, or I don't know. I don't know enough about the Canadian media landscape to speak intelligently about this, but there's definitely a lot of press out there about Jesse Brown, about Canadaland. And I thought it was interesting that Jesse Brown talks here, and it sounds like was responsible for some of the research and reporting, but Olusola is our host. So yeah, I'll be curious to see how that develops. What do you think?
But like, why do you think it was that case?
I mean, Olusola seems like an authoritative figure to speak on this story.
Yeah, I was wondering whether that was like one of the main reasons.
But he also
presents... Also feel like I could listen to him all day. He presents it really well.
Yes. He has a good voice.
He's a great voice. And yeah, I definitely think the connection there, like he has got the authority to speak on this subject. And I think maybe given the subject matter, it just feels like that authority is really important when he's speaking out.
Yeah, I think so. And especially, as we talked about, because he has that personal history with things like this in his own life. But yeah, what are your kind of initial thoughts after hearing just this first episode?
Okay, shockingly, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in. I can't wait to listen to like what's going on, because it's just so convoluted and cruel in so many ways. Like I feel like the cruelty obviously of setting up an NGO and collecting money, and if we're to believe what we're hearing in the first episode, like not giving that money to the charities or to the areas or to the children that you said that you were going to help support, is obviously, I don't think cruel is the right word. There are lots of worse words, but that's pretty cruel. But then there's this other side of the cruelty of Mark and Craig being children themselves and being used in an inappropriate way to garner sympathy. Like, had Craig been 22, 25, 30, 40, 50, would anyone listen to him? His words seemed to hit home with people more so because it was a child speaking out for other children and not because of the message, because I feel like that message is said so many times by so many different people, but it lands differently when someone who is younger and maybe has that innocence about them, that you kind of like trust them more.
Right.
But yeah, so like I find that like that cruelty like so intriguing as to how this all like went down.
I also think this, so two things. One, I feel like the sort of, not this specific story, but the general idea of this story of possibly children being exploited for like a seemingly good cause, but it's really maybe just a money-making scheme, is so pervasive. And I was actually just thinking about this earlier today because, and I'm not criticizing this organization, but my wife is going to be leading a brownie troop, which is like the younger Girl Scouts. And she had the flyer, or the internal flyer for how the cookie sales go. I was just looking through that and realizing, like, God, this is So they have these tips on basically how the Girl Scouts go and sell the cookies. And I thought this is sort of related to this story of like, if you put kids out there and have them ask for money and put it under the guise of a good cause, and I feel like the Girl Scouts are actually a good cause. I feel like they do a lot of good things from what little I know. But how often does that happen? I mean, I was sent out so often as a kid to go ask people for money, for fundraisers, for my school,
Mm.
for sports, for things like that. And just like, people are willing to give money to a little kid who like makes a compelling case or just is cute and innocent theoretically, and it seems like such an opportunity for exploitation.
Yeah, and like it clearly is. I think we see it quite a lot in social media these days as well, where like people, you know, content creators might use their children. And like, to be fair, I don't think that they see it as exploitation. I'm not saying it necessarily is, but I'm just saying like the children don't have the ability to consent to like being on these channels and like, you know, these funny stories about them being shared to like whatever your audience is.
Yeah.
And yet it is done. And when they're making money from it, then like what of that money goes to the children? And obviously if it goes to the parents, you'd hope the parents are helping to support the children, etc. But like I think we've got it there as well. And then also like I know from my very short time in India, seeing children manipulated in terms of going with a charity. Like we were always told when we went over, like, you do not post pictures of the children that you're working with online. You just don't, because that's like it's like using their poverty as a way of being like, look at the good that I did.
Wait, what were you
And
doing
it's
in
just
India?
we were teaching for like 5 weeks in like schools for street children, basically in Calcutta.
Okay, and so you were
Um
told not to post pictures of those kids.
yeah, so we went with our college, like when we finished our teaching, when we finished up in the college, like there was a group of 30 of us that went over at that time. And one of the things they said is like, it's not respectful to post pictures of this. Like that is not, like, none of the children are agreeing to that or whatever. It's just not like
Yeah.
acceptable.
Hmm.
Any postings that went online were always like agreed upon for like the organization. But like we saw it there ourselves. We saw kids being sent out to beg on the streets of Calcutta because their cute little faces are going to get better. We also heard horror stories of like kids being injured intentionally. So because a child who's injured, who has a scar on their face or who has like a burn or whatever, is going to
Yeah.
get more money. So like there is all this like playing in here with this exploitation of children. And I think that's what's so interesting and cruel and horrible about this case in particular is it's supposed to be raising money about the exploitation of children, but at the like forefront here is the exploitation of children. And obviously this went on for 25 years. So Craig, who was 12 when this started,
Yeah.
was like what, like 30,
He's in his 30s now.
37?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like he's obviously been brought to court over it from what we hear in the first episode. And then it like begs this question of like, if you've grown up for like 6 of your like really pivotal years from 12 to 18 being told that this is how you should do and this is how you should make money, is it him that's the one doing the wrong here? Because those 6 years he's been taught by someone else how
Yeah.
to live and how to be and how to get money from someone. But it does also beg the question of the lack of like questioning, like the lack of critical questioning here when it comes to charities, which I think is something that's come up so many times over the last like decade or so.
Yeah.
At one point, someone described Craig as perfectly scripted, perfectly groomed.
Mm-hmm.
And that phrase, I was like, oh my God, like he was taught this. Like you're not just 12 and come up with this.
No, and it reminded me of two different things. I think I was going to say two things before, now I said one. I forgot what the other one was, but two things now. One was, I feel like we've done several recent stories this year about children being groomed or being exploited, right? Like this was a topic. I mean, in a way, it came up in the clearing with April, where she was she and her siblings were, their father was a serial killer, and they didn't know that, but they dealt with kind of the trauma and abuses that came alongside that, and then when we did, well, Japan Crime Desk had several stories about children, but jumping forward to the Teacher's Pet, where I think, like, I think I said I went into that feeling like Joanne Curtis, the teenager who was at the center of that story, was it wasn't clear at the very beginning kind of what her role was. Then you realize, like, yes, she was groomed and she was exploited and she was taken advantage of, and she had, like, it has affected her entire life. But the other thing I wanted to mention was I read a book, I don't know, a couple months ago called I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, which is about a woman who was a child actress in Hollywood. And she was on a Nickelodeon show, iCarly. And her mother, like, she didn't want to be a child actor. Her mother wanted her to be a child actor. And her mother forced her into this from a very young age. I think, like, I don't know, she was like 6 or 7 years old, and her mother was basically pushing her into this. And I was thinking about just how often that happens, how often parents use their children, whether it's for their own dreams, whether it's for their own, like, chance to make money, and then those children, like that. I mean, in that, I think it's a really good book, and it gets into, she developed very severe eating disorders from that experience, and trying to stay young and trying to stay thin, and but I mean, it's obviously, like, deeply psychologically affected her for her entire life, which yeah, when we talk about Craig here, I mean, it was mentioned in this podcast that Hugh Winters, who was the businessman who hosted him at his home, how, like, his kids couldn't relate to Craig because he wasn't like a normal kid. Like, he didn't know how to play cards. Like, the kids just kind of thought he was sort of odd. And I don't know, that, like, you feel sort of sorry for him, even though he's at the center of this.
Oh no, of course. Well, that's what I'm saying though. Like, how can he be the one who's like fully at the center of it if all this was happening before? Like, if he was taught for 6 years that this is right, by his primary educator.
Yeah.
But even, he's going around doing all these talks or whatever when he's 12. I'm like, where's his schooling? Like, where's his education? Where's his ability to go out into the road and play kick the can, or like soccer, or fucking curling or something, Like, where is that? It's an interesting one. I am kind of a little bit like, I know we've got 5 episodes plus an update episode, but I'm intrigued to know, is it just going to be like, are the next 5 episodes or the next 4 episodes just going to be what we heard in episode 1 but just in more detail? Like, it is that
question. I don't know.
Like, all it's going to be. And I don't mean all, like, I think that's like, but often we hear like the basis of like a crime, and then we hear some intricacies and things we didn't hear about in the first episode, but I'm kind of struggling to see that in the layout of this one. And now I haven't looked at the names of the episode or anything like that, so I'm just intrigued.
I mean, one of the things that I'm really curious about is, so this charity started in 1995, and then the sort of scandal erupted in 2020. So 25 years. So we're talking about 25 years of these. I mean, it's multiple charities and multiple for-profit businesses that were going on over this time, and we get kind of a smattering of that in this first episode of what went on over those years, but certainly not in any detail. Maybe this is also coming off the Teacher's Pet, where we had 19 hours of content to go in every minute detail, and we're not going to get that here. This is going to be a lot shorter. So I'm kind of curious how, I guess the one thing I may be most curious about is how this went on for 25 years, if it was shady from the start. Yeah.
And if some people knew it was shady from the start. Also, do you reckon this, like, kid from Pakistan, I think it was, like, that he uses as like his story, I'm assuming that child it never existed?
Why?
I don't know. It feels like.
Yeah, actually, I went and searched for that, and I found the New York Times story on it from 1995.
Oh.
So this was in April 19th, 1995. New York Times. The headline is "Child Labor Critic is Slain in Pakistan." So a 12-year-old boy who won international acclaim for highlighting the horrors of child labor in Pakistan has been shot dead The boy Iqbal Masih was gunned down on Sunday as he and 2 friends rode their bicycles in their village near Lahore, said Ehsan Ullah Khan, chairman of the Bonded Labor Liberation Front, which opposes child labor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was wrong. But also, how can you Google shit when we're like only 1 episode in? That feels like cheating. Like, I feel like I should be able to have this conversation without you having Googled that.
I honestly Googled this trying to track down the date for the time machine, which seems like a terrible way to explain how I got to the story, but it is the honest truth.
Alrighty. So, Jeff, tell me now, are you, I know you're going to finish this because we have to, but if you didn't have this podcast, like, would you want to finish this?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really...
Is it because it's low stakes? Like, it's low investment, sorry.
I was waiting for you to bring that up and give me shit about that. But no.
Me, on the other hand, I choose one that's 19 hours long.
I chose a short one. No one gets murdered, I don't think. Well, I don't know.
Well,
I am.
I mean, someone got murdered in the first episode.
Yeah, I realized as I said it. Yeah, I think this is an interesting story. I think it's something different. It's not something we've really talked about before. I think it's I am interested in the topic of these charities and what they do with their money. I always think about this whenever I give money to charity, of like, where is that money really going? And sometimes it's less interesting things, like how much of it is going to administrative expenses versus how much actually going to help the people. It's the same thing like if you get in the mail, like we get from a bunch of charities things like they send you return address labels or they send you bumpers. Like I got a bumper sticker from Planned Parenthood. But like, okay, so they're choosing to spend their money sending printing bumper stickers and sending them out to people as a way of generating revenue, which is a whole different topic of like, well, okay, but if the ends justify the means, if that gets them to raise awareness, it's a marketing spend. It's, like you can't just...
Yeah, and it's difficult.
How excited are you to listen to this?
I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I feel like I'm going to get bored, if I'm really honest. And I know I'm a problem. I know it's me. I'm the problem. It's me with the whole true crime genre. I'm aware of that. But I mean, look, I could listen to Olusola's voice all day, but will I be like invested in everything that's happening? Hard to tell right now. I know it's only short, but like, I don't know. I feel like we've heard the entire story in episode 1.
Oh, that's an interesting comment. Let's find out if that's true.
Yeah, let's do it.
Before we go, if you enjoyed listening to this discussion, please leave a rating.
5 stars.
It's not just charities that need help being proven that they're credible out in the world. We, as podcast hosts, also really need you to let people know we are a real podcast. We appreciate your support, whether it's a 5-star rating, whether it's a comment on the episode. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're just listening episode by episode, go ahead and click subscribe on Spotify, on Apple, whatever your app is. And then lastly, and most importantly, spread the word. Tell your friends. Put down your phone right now and go.
Family.
Yeah.
Frenemies. Neighbors. Dogs.
And let them know. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time, how did this charity turn into a cult?
A cult? And how did they get away with it for so long?
We're recapping all of the white saviors.
That's on the next So Much Crime.
So Little Time.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of MimeGov Media. The executive producer is Paxton Calariso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show in your podcast app. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.